Ladies and gentlemen, absolutely everything has a standard. There's an exact standard for a pound. There's an exact standard for inches, feet, and yards. There are exact standards for a jet airplane motor, and there are exact standards for a bridge. But more important to you, there are exact standards for human behavior. The reason I say this is our nation is abandoning those correct standards of behavior, and by doing so, we will seal our own tragic fate. You need to know more, so stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know the exact length of a meter, you can find it. It's at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And this facility is responsible for storing weights and measures. They have what are called prototypes. There are exact ounces, pounds, and kilograms. There are rods there for measuring feet, yards, metric sizes. But there is a truth all of us must understand. And it's this: there must be an exact standard for everything in life. An inch must always be an inch. Truth must always be truth. Laws of mathematics must always be the same. And the laws of physics have to be absolutely accurate. And if they were not, airplanes wouldn't fly. Buildings would fall to the ground. The point I make today is that there's also an absolute standard for human behavior. At one time, America understood that standard. And it's true that we didn't always live by our standard, but we knew what that absolute standard was. We knew God was real. We knew we were to keep His commandments. We were not to have other gods before Him, and we were to respect our parents. We were not to murder, lie, or steal. In America's early history, we generally kept those standards, and as a result, America prospered. We grew to become the greatest power in the entire world, and we enjoyed enormous discoveries and inventions, and we became the richest nation in the world. We became so powerful that we were able to save the world in 2 world wars. In fact, the hope, the happiness, the destiny of America today depends on this. We must return to belief in God's standards, or we will fail. However, our nation is rejecting God and His standards. We've lost sight of His exact standards for success in life, and we're following the same exact stages every other fallen empire has ever experienced. Every power starts with belief in the nation that they're building, and that belief creates self-sacrifice, honesty, and integrity in its citizens. This in turn generates expansion and great economic growth. Then that rich economy that develops leads to affluence, and affluence is followed by intellectualism and debate. This leads to confusion, conflicts, division, and loss of direction in the nation. Eventually, it evolves into an era of pessimism among the people. They're just looking out for self. And so self-indulgence follows, and it generates decadence, and finally, there is collapse. I say this because America is following the same path that other failed empires took. And we're now in that stage of self-serving indulgence and decadence. And I would ask you to think that people today should see this trend and they should be able to reject it. But we don't seem to learn from the past. We don't see that we're in this last stage. As John Hawkins states on the Town Hall website, in the last few decades, our country has spiraled downward into decadence in ways that are genuinely threatening the continuance of the American dream. America is spiraling into decadence. There's an over-sexualization taking place in our society. As Webroot reports, every second, 28,258 users are watching pornography on the internet. Every second, $3,000 is being spent on pornography on the internet. According to Nielsen, 28% use a work computer for porn in our modern world, and it's not just affecting adults. Patrick Fagan, one-time Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, explained the National Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy regarding the pornographic content of phone texting among teenagers makes it clear that the digital revolution is being used by younger and younger children to dismantle the barriers that channel sexuality into family life. It's tragic. There's also an increasing acceptance of drug use in our society today. CBS reports this. Despite tough anti-drug laws, a new survey shows that the U.S. has the highest level of illegal drug use in the world. Americans report the highest levels of cocaine and marijuana use today. Alcohol also plays a part in our headlong rush to decadence. The U.S. yearly consumption of alcohol is 664 million gallons. Combined sales of beer, wine, and liquor, they total over $162 billion. Yes, and binge drinking has become a fad among many of our youth. Today, 38 million people binge drink, and 88,000 deaths a year are related to alcohol abuse. Fewer and fewer children have two married parents. Kids are being influenced more by their music than by their parents. And now iPods are piping their music directly into the children's ears where parents can't hear it. So how is today's sexed up music affecting them, these children? It's giving them the wrong impression about sexual behavior for sure. Teens now think that they should be way more sexually active than they are. Worse, some of their music is just plain destructive. Some of the sounds the new music makes are depressing. In other cases, the words themselves are deeply evil. For example, the group called Typo Negative sings the words, "Kill all the people." They yell in their song, "She's got a date at midnight with Nosferatu." That is, a vampire. They tell kids, "Are you afraid? Are you afraid to die? Don't be afraid of suicide." And then there's Slipknot. They belt out the Lord of Lies, the morning star, you had to be set free. They chant, "I hope you live to see the day when the world goes up in flames." And in another song they tell listeners, "I've got my own demons, go get your own." Eminem sings this, do exactly what the song says. Drop out, take drugs, and kill people. Finally, there is a loss of religious values, and this certainly is happening to us today. America is rejecting God. In Kentucky, schools in every classroom had to post the Ten Commandments. In 1980, the Supreme Court ruled against the state of Kentucky, and they ordered it to take down all those copies of the Ten Commandments, and the following was their reasoning. They said this: having the commandments on the walls may induce a student to read, meditate upon, and actually obey what is written therein. The Supreme Court of the United States recognized this vital truth. The Word of God can transform the thinking and the character of a people, but they did not want God's truth to be forced on others. And so it continued. The court later banned prayers in public schools in 1963. They banned clergy prayers at graduations in 1962. And they banned student pregame prayers in 2000. And now our own president stated that we're no longer a Christian nation. Atlanta's fire chief was dismissed for giving out a Christian book he had written. A bakery had to pay lesbian couple $135,000 for not baking them a cake. Military chaplains are forced to eliminate the word or the name Jesus. Pastors are subject to fines if they preach biblically sexual ethics. Christians have been shot in churches and in schools for their faith, and comedians today mock and ridicule Christianity and God's Bible. In the Apologetics website, David Miller writes of our religious erosion, and he states it has been reached, or has reached, crisis proportions. He says this: for some 50 years now, the public school and university system of this country has been steadily chipping away at belief in God and the Christian religion. Many American universities are now firmly in the grip and under the control of atheists, agnostics, and skeptics who forthrightly reject belief in God and who embrace a materialistic view of origins. CNS News reports an interview with Dr. Ben Carson in which he said America's Judeo-Christian values are what made this country exceptional in such a short period of time. Then Carson added, the biggest problem today, however, is that America has abandoned God, which is causing the United States to rapidly decline. Ladies and gentlemen, these are all signs of an empire about to die. And so our question today is this: will we survive as a nation? We know there are absolute laws, exact standards in physics. There are also absolute psychological laws, and what few admit is that there are absolute laws for human behavior. But there are standards for the success or failure of a nation, and when following God's standards, America became great. The question for this generation then is this: will we disappear like all the other great empires before us? The truth is, there is a way for America to regain its greatness. And I tell you now, it's not electing the right politician. You need to know the truth, and you can know. Today, we'd like to offer you our free book entitled The 10 Commandments. These 10 Commandments are the Creator's standard for behavior, and if followed, they can turn our nation around. They could make the nation great again. Moreover, they're even more important to each individual. Personally, if you choose to follow them, there's a great reward. Our short book is well worth reading, and the good news is that all of our booklets are free as a public service. So stay tuned. At the end of our program, we'll show you how you can order your free copy of the 10 Commandments. Ladies and gentlemen, so far we've realized that there are absolute standards for everything, whether it's in science or engineering. If they don't keep their standards, they fail. In like manner, there are standards for marriage, and if they're not kept, they'll fail. If standards for production are not met, a company fails. If standards for behavior in a nation are not followed, it will fail. And tragically, this has been the history of the world empires throughout time. Not just one of them still exists. It's not because they got old and died, it's because they all went through the same exact stages ending in failure. And the last stage before collapse was becoming degenerate. And sadly, this is the stage that America has now entered. The rejection of the standards that produce greatness bring destruction. What is shocking is that we actually know this truth, but for some reason we don't act on it. This is the common trend in society today. People develop a kind of herd mentality. It starts with everyone's desire to be accepted. Everybody has this. There's the need for approval from those around us, and we generally look to others to ensure that we are improved. But it tends to cause a kind of groupthink. People tend to adjust their opinions to match those of the group. Few are willing to think for themselves, even when issues are great. In his book, Dr. G. Burns states this: it is hard not to conform. He says the brain is hardwired to conform. As America is turning away from God's standards, people are drifting with it. As the media continues to downplay God, the country follows along. As the music leads people away from God, they dance along to it. As political correctness continues to dominate society, as gender laws continue to change, people just tend to go along with the crowd. And tragically, As we blindly follow along, we're suffering. The cities we live in are slowly becoming slums. The number of jobs are drying up. The number of homeless people are increasing. Natural disasters are increasing around the nation. We experienced Hurricane Andrew and Katrina. There have been massive floods in Iowa and Louisiana. Vast fires have raged in California and in Montana. And lawlessness is growing to become a way of life. Local police calculate the number of crimes committed in their area. They forward these numbers to the FBI, and the FBI uses them to estimate the number of crimes known to the police. And they estimate that the violent crimes have increased 4 times since 1960, quadrupled. And they warn that today we're at an all-time high. Crimes and murder by children is experiencing an incredible surge. Time magazine called it a deadly love affair, while Newsweek said it was a virtual epidemic sweeping our nation. They're talking about young people and guns, and this is one of the deadliest trends in America today. 2007, the Justice Department had issued reports showing that each day more than 100,000 children come to school with guns and knives. A University of Michigan study reports that 9% of 8th graders carry a gun, knife, or club to school at least once a month. In all, an estimated 270,000 guns go to school every day. U.S. News and World Report estimated that there are more than 3 million crimes committed in the public schools every year. That amounts to more than 17,000 crimes every single day. All of this is a reflection of the downfall, the spiral of evil that is increasing at enormous levels. And what was once horrible has actually become acceptable. What was once debased is now becoming the new normal. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan wrote in the American Scholar, "The amount of deviant behavior in American society has increased beyond the levels the community can afford to even recognize. And accordingly, we have been redefining deviancy to accept conduct previously stigmatized, and also quietly raising the normal level in categories where behavior was abnormal by any earlier standard." Do you get it? This trend has become so pervasive, we're accepting evil as normal. And it's reached incredible heights to the point where U.S. soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan were ordered not to stop sexual abuse of Afghan young boys by Muslim allies. And it holds true on U.S. military supplied bases. That is, the things that we own, our territory. Meanwhile, the response of Congress is ho-hum. The response of the media is ho-hum. The response of the people has become ho-hum. The older generation that knew the truth has passed away, and the new generation coming up no longer knows the true history of our country. The new younger generation thinks it knows better, and the result is that those leading us in this direction don't see the end of their actions. They don't consider what kind of world they will leave to others. As the psalmist writes, "As for man, his days are as grass, as a flower of the field, so he flourishes, for the wind passes over it, and it's gone, and the place thereof is known no more. But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him, and his righteousness unto his children's children, to such as keep his covenant, and to those who remember his commandments to do them." God's mercy is always available to those who keep his commands. All this horror that we're talking about and we're seeing in the news does not have to be. Its entire downward slide could be reversed. We need to return to the standards of our Creator. If we do, he will bless and protect our nation just as he promises. Notice Deuteronomy 28, "And it shall come to pass," he says, "if you shall hearken diligently to the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command you this day, that the Lord thy God will set you on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake you, if you shall hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God." Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, and the increase of your kine, and the flocks and the sheep. Blessed shall be the basket in your store. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord shall cause your enemies to rise up against you and be smitten before your face. They'll come out against you one way, and they'll flee before 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon you and in your storehouses and all that you set your hand unto do, and he shall bless you in the land which the Lord your God has given you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is God's personal promise to any nation. If we keep his commandments, he'll provide for our nation. We will have peace, prosperity. But exactly what are his commands? Do you know what they are? Can you recite them? Most people don't even think of God's commandments in today's world. And worst of all, most churches today teach that the commandments are done away. As a result, the people don't think they need to keep them. But Christ never said they were done away. If you believe the 10 Commandments are done away, understand it's a lie that you've been taught. Just the opposite is true. The Savior said they would never be done away. The problem is that men distort the truth. They twist words to accommodate their own prior beliefs, and the very people who God chose to keep his law perverted it. They use the same tactics of twisting the truth. And here's Christ's own words to them, and they could just as well be to us. Matthew 15, but in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. You see what I'm talking about? Men teach the rules they want to live by, not God's rules. And Christ rejects churches that teach God's laws are done away. And here are his words to such organizations. Christ boldly stated in Matthew 5, for truly I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, not one jot or one tittle shall in any way pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Do you see, it's vastly important to understand this statement. Those who teach breaking the commandments now will be least then in the kingdom. Those who refuse to keep the commandments simply won't even be there. Consider this question from the following point of view. Put yourself in God's position. If you were going to say your last words to mankind, the last encouragement you would tell them, what would you say? For all those who reject God's commandments, notice the last words of God the Father. In the last book of the Bible, in the last chapter of that book, God says this in Revelation 22, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have a right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city that is the holy New Jerusalem. If you want eternal life, if you want God's protection as the world worsens, if you want to know the absolute standards for having a good and successful life, if you've been taught the lie that God's commands are done away, if you don't know his commands, if you don't understand their purpose, there is a way to know. Today we'd like to offer you our free book, The 10 Commandments. These brief commands are the Creator's standards for behavior, and if followed, they would turn our nation around and God would make the nation great again. His commands are even more important to each individual. Should you choose to follow them, there's great reward. And our short book is well worth reading. And the good news is that our booklets are absolutely free as a public service. You can be assured that there will absolutely never be any unrequested follow-up. So stay tuned, and in one moment, we'll show you how you can order your free book, The 10 Commandments. For now, thanks for watching.
No one knows the day or hour when the end shall come to pass. Not the angels that dwell in heaven, only the Father from above. No one knows the day or hour.